Okay, it's time to commit. 2024 is the year for prioritizing yourself. Begin your new smile journey with Byte, and you could start seeing results in just 2 to 3 weeks. Just order your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95 at Byte.com. Byte Clear aligners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces. Plus, they offer financing options, accept eligible insurance, and you can pay with your HSA FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we... I'm just laughing, Beth, your face when you took a drink. I'm sorry.
I was trying not to...
I know. It was like a delayed reaction.
I threw my coaster at myself, and I knew Jared saw it. And I was like, fuck. It's not smooth. Anyway.
And why does this always happen right before we start to hit record? And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I am the ever-graceful Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Jared Rogers, producer and star in the hilarious new pseudo-documentary, When the Screaming Starts. Welcome to the show!
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're excited too.
Excited too.
Especially with this pick, which might be a little spicy, but we'll see when we get there.
Terry has been, just like for context for both Jared and everyone listening, Terry texted me last night saying it's going to be a spicy recording, and I did not know that it would be spicy, because I don't know what this means, and I'm very worried. So I don't know what's happening.
All right, but before we do get to all that goodness, let's take it back to the start. How did you get introduced to horror?
I'm an only child, so my cousins were kind of my brothers growing up. They're sort of 10 and 12 years, I think it is, older than me. And I think the first horror film I saw was, and it was nearly going to be my pick actually, but I saw that someone else had already done it, was Event Horizon was my intro. And I think I must have been, I want to say like 7 or 8, and they were like, the cousins were playing like the babysitter role. I was round at it was my aunt's house, and yeah, it was in the daytime as well, but it's still.
Oh man.
I think it was because that's the only time I've not even gone back to watching that, but I just remember there was, and I can't remember if it was a flashback or what it was, but there was like a scene in a bathtub and someone slitting their wrists, and I just remember that kind of stuck with me for quite a while as a kid, just kind of that image, and a lot of that. So that was my intro.
That movie is so full of horrific images that like I don't like, even as someone who likes extreme horror, it's hard to watch. Like as a 7 or 8 year old, I wouldn't even know how to process that.
Yeah, it was.
Oh my God.
What an introduction to the genre, though, too. Like, that is like, I mean, I was eased in with like Universal Monsters and, and then like Hammer films. You're just like, here, jump into
Jump
Sam
right in.
Neill with no eyes and corpses in tubs and...
Yeah. It was. I've definitely gotten like a lot of the kind of more sort of child's, I guess, sort of friendly Halloween films has definitely been, I'd say, more in the last few years because my wife's American and I live in America now, so yeah, so she's introduced me into a lot of her kind of childhood Halloween ones. I forget the name. She's going to kill me actually. Like we watched it last Halloween, where I think is it their grandma's a witch.
Oh, Halloween Town?
Halloween Town, yeah. I watched that for the first time ever, like, last year, and I was like, yeah, this is much better. I'd have loved to watch this as a child and not Event Horizon. And
oh, man. I've actually never seen Halloween Town.
Oh my god, okay, so I watched both as a kid. So I loved both the really cute, like, Halloween witchy stuff and the scary stuff. So I was just, like, Halloween, I was just, like, eating good because I wanted to be a witch. So, like, Halloween Town was my dream. And it is so fun. I mean, I haven't revisited it in a long time, so I have no idea how it stands up. But, like, to me, it's like Hocus Pocus and Halloween Town were, like, my two movies growing up. Like, my two cute Halloween movies, like, those were the two. And they're the best.
Absolutely, yeah.
This is not a Hocus Pocus podcast, but now it is. A Halloween Town podcast, but now it is.
Yeah, I don't even know when that came out, but I think I was too old for that one, and it was on cable too, right? And I
Disney.
never had
Disney.
cable.
It was a Disney Channel original movie.
Oh, it was a DCOM.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was a. Yes, it was in fact. But anyway, going back to Event Horizon. So after that, were you kind of like hooked on horror after that, or were you a little bit like after watching Event Horizon, were you just kind of like diving in?
I was probably a little bit. Kind of wanting to have the most kind of sort of watered down vanilla kind of movies for I think quite a while, and so just to get over that trauma. But I suppose like it probably started through I don't know, maybe through like cartoons. I think maybe like kind of with like the more kind of sort of adult themed ones, like South Park was in its. I don't know what like season it was but again it was the same cousins babysitting me, watching that far too young, and even though most of the maybe more extreme words were bleeped out, there was still kind of ones that I probably shouldn't be hearing, and obviously humour that probably I should have been exposed to. So I think like kind of that and kind of that sort of I guess low level sort of violence in South Park and The Simpsons, and there was also and I've never been able to find it. I think was it called like the God? Was it God, the Devil, and Bob or something? Was I don't know how many seasons it ran for, and I can't remember what channel it was on in the UK. But that was I think there was kind of like low level sort of kind of horror, obviously kind of sort of moments where you sort of see hell and things like that. So that was kind of my from the extreme kind of. Everest of Event Horizon to kind of going through the kind of sort of cartoon stuff, and then going into the sort of what my pick is for this kind of stumbling upon this film.
I've never heard of the God, the Devil, and Bob, but I'm looking it up right now, and it was on NBC apparently. I've never even heard of it.
I had never heard of it. Wild.
Yeah.
Huh.
It was, I think, because we had, like, at that age, I think we just had 5 channels, and maybe Sky was just out, but it was, like, Sky in its early, not like Sky Digital now, where there's just hundreds and hundreds of channels.
Right.
So, yeah, I think maybe it was, like, Channel 4 or something, but yeah.
Were you a scared kid growing up? Did horror movies, like, terrify you a lot?
Yeah, I was definitely that. I was never like left on my own as a child like that much, but like I think when I got to a certain age, like my sort of parents were like, "Yeah, you can look after yourself, right?" Because my dad would work away like for like so many weeks at a time, and like my mum would work sort of like different sort of shift stuff. So yeah, sometimes if it wasn't my grandma looking after me, it would be sort of in the house on my own, and just that kind of very imaginative child and any sounds. And I think we did have, I'm trying to think, I think most rooms had carpets, but it was just that kind of slightly kind of creaky as soon, especially in like the winter time, as the kind of the heating, the central heating would come on, and you just hear these kind of like sort of squeaks and creaks of the floorboards, and winter as well. Like even this kind of time of year in the UK as well, just it gets dark a lot earlier as well. So just even like you'd be walking home from school, and by the time you've got home, it would if it's an overcast day, which where I'm from in England often is, it would be dark really, really early. So yeah, just that kind of sort of really added a sort of play to that sort of spooky season as well.
Cool. I can relate to that because I grew up in Alaska, and by the time in the wintertime, it was like you get home from school and it's dusk out already. So I can relate.
That's crazy. That was so you're used to the cold weather.
Oh, I love the cold weather. This is my perfect weather right now. It's so nice. Give it to me.
Weirdo. But then, Jared, do you still get scared watching movies, or are you more of a jaded horror fan like some of us?
I'm trying to think what I've seen recently that's kind of I definitely do get scared. I'd say more like the psychological ones. I think the ones that kind of could be kind of really happen. I think are the ones that sort of stick with me. Like I've definitely gotten a lot better with like gore and kind of other blood stuff. That was something that I was sort of maybe Event Horizon. I was like, I've had my fill for a few years, and would kind of sort of draw to the ones where whether it was an actual monster or it was a person that would sort of be hidden and hinted to. I've always, I'd say, probably been more sort of drawn to those kind of horror films where it's not out and out gore. It's kind of a slow build and kind of sort of playing with almost sort of playing with what's not there, and just how your kind of imagination can take it.
Do you remember the last movie that like truly scared you or brought you back to that feeling of being a kid?
Oh, I don't off the top of my... I'm trying to think, actually. Because that's the thing, it is a rarer... Yeah. Especially like the last, I'd say, 3 or 4 years, like with obviously like kind of doing the film that we've worked on, I've not actually watched that much. There's a whole list, like ever-growing list of films that I still need to watch, like, because I seem to like sort of draw myself back to things I've watched before and I just enjoy, because like kind of watching a film or a TV show is in the last few years has been such a rarity that I kind of almost just, it's that kind of like comfort food of, I know I love this, I know I love a margarita pizza or whatever, peanut M&Ms, so I'll just go with that rather than sort of exploring. But I'm trying to think, and this isn't nowhere near as this the last film, but I was just thinking of the film like Signs, and I watched this when it was in the cinema, and obviously it's like decades old, but like kind of like those sort of ones, like the jump scare ones, kind of sort of again stuck with me, even though I wasn't sort of thinking there was an alien in the bushes and we didn't have cornfields where I grew up, but just the sort of those ones where things could be sort of lurking.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned that you kind of gravitate more towards like comfort food in terms of horror movies. So what are some of your favorites? What are the ones that you go back to all the time?
I mean, the one I've picked is definitely one. It's kind of, I guess it's almost the one that sort of scared me for life, but it's almost like a I don't know. I think the more I see it, the more I can sort of see it as from like maybe like a filmmaking standpoint. So it's sort of slowly, it's kind of sort of soothing that fear that young little Jared had when he watched the film far too young. But I'm trying to think. I think a lot of things, I guess they're probably maybe classed more as thrillers. I'm trying to think they're out and out horrors, like and I forget the name all of a sudden. This, but the Ethan Hawke film where is he
Sinister?
I think Sinister, where like they move into the house and they find like the reels and
that's Sinister.
That again, like for my like the little kind of jump scares, like I remember watching that in the cinema where it's I think it's like the lawnmower.
The lawnmower
kind of bit,
yes.
And just remember kind of watching that, and it's so like quiet as well. There's like little crackling bits of the like the real and stuff. And so yeah, kind of like I'd say like those kind of films. I think what else? I guess like Seven as well as another. I don't know if that's really classed as horror or if it's just kind of like thriller, but yeah, sort of those. And I think what else? Yeah, I'd say those. I'd say that has horror that maybe mixes with other elements like the kind of like the Alien films and like kind of sort of blurs with other genres.
Cool. So you have a movie out, what you star in, also you produced, called When the Screaming Starts. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about the movie?
Yeah, so When the Screaming Starts is a horror comedy about an aspiring serial killer called Aidan Mendel, and we follow him creating this Manson-style cult. So it kind of follows, similar to like a true crime kind of documentary, but this is about a guy that has watched every horror film, every sort of true crime serial killer, and kind of wants to emulate that for himself to kind of get that infamy. And then I play Norman Graysmith, who's the documentary filmmaker that's thinking that he's got his kind of golden goose in Aidan and thinks he's going to become this world-renowned documentary filmmaker for actually capturing someone's origin story.
Hell yeah. So you know Connor Baru, who directed it, and Ed Hartland, who wrote it. You guys have been, working together for a while, right? On projects?
Yeah, we've since we all met in London at drama school in 2011. So yeah, it's been a long old road to
cool
for our first feature.
So okay, so who had the initial idea for When the Screaming Starts?
So that was Ed Hartland. He's he's definitely the, out of all of us, the horror I don't know what you'd call it, encyclopedia. And he was watching, I think it was the Ted Bundy tapes. Like he was actually reviewing for I think it was the London Horror Society. But so he was like kind of watching that and just was equally disturbed by it, but also just couldn't help but sort of be fixated upon it and want to sort of watch the almost like binge the whole show at once, and just kind of started to question that and like other true crime things that were coming up that was sort of solely focused on serial killers, and almost in a way sort of I don't want to say glamorizing it, but definitely holding the serial killer on the kind of the plinth, and like the victims are almost just these kind of little sort of B characters that just pop along, and like the main focus on the serial killer. And I think that was the origin for that. And then we all love comedy, and we wanted it to be kind of a really sort of dark comedy as well. So I think that was where the kind of the seed was planted. And it's definitely, the film's had so many different versions as well, like how it ends and all these things, like without giving any spoilers away. But his serial killer knowledge was a little bit scary. Like kind of, he was like, oh yeah, this character could be like based on this person, and they did this. And I'm like, okay, Ed.
Oh yeah, I interviewed him a couple of months ago. We talked about Albert Fish, and Connor was in the call, and he was like, "You guys are weird. Like, why are you talking about all these horrendous serial killers?" It was incredible. Yeah,
Albert Fish he's
fucked up.
Gnarly.
But so, When the Screaming Starts is a pseudo-documentary style, so it's like What We Do in the Shadows. It's very like similar to the kind of the style of What We Do in the Shadows. So what kind of what was that like working in that kind of genre of filmmaking and making it feel like a documentary, but obviously not? Yeah,
it was, I think, one of the reasons we wanted it to shoot it as the documentary style, because as much as we wanted to look as high a budget as possible, we definitely knew it was with the kind of the scraps of money we had initially to make it, that we could achieve it. And if it looked in parts a little kind of rough around the edges, it kind of sort of played in with that documentary style. But things like What We Do in the Shadows and The Office as well, the I mean, the American office, but also the UK office with that kind of really sort of bleak British look, that real kind of sort of dry humour at times. We really wanted to sort of tap into that well. And yeah, and at the time it was something we was going to try and shoot for, I think it was 12 days was the original. It was Adrian Musto, our DP. He did a lot of kind of like haunted house, or I don't know what the show is, like Help My House is Haunted or something, and like other documentaries about ghost towns and stuff. So he had like a really short window in January of 2020 where he was like, yeah, I'm free for these dates. He told us that in, I think it was October of 2019. So we the script was pretty much there, but the actual everything else of props and costume really quickly. So it was a lot of Connor, Ed, and myself. WhatsApp groups, staying up till the early hours and getting up early and looking. I don't think I've looked before then or ever since for women's costumes. Like, just I remember us being in, after doing like a location run, I think it was in, I don't know if it was like a McDonald's or something at like 10 at night. It was like the only thing that was open on a Sunday, and we like just had like, my laptop was just all huddled around like looking at 20 tabs open of like, oh, this, like, is this dress for Claire? Is this like, we need like a pink jumper that's got a skull on and all this, and just like, if anyone looked over, just these like three guys, like, what are they doing? Like people just like mopping the floor in the background, just like looking over our shoulders, just, should we call the police? Like going, oh well, we need some fake blood for this, or that, or this, we need 3 of this because, yeah, if we get too much fake blood, or we need to do reshoots, and yeah, just our internet history must have been very questionable in the months leading up. Somewhere. Yeah. Just our order history was lots of fake blood.
Absolutely amazing.
That's awesome.
Okay. So, do we want to talk about the movie you brought with you today? Jared, what movie did you bring?
All right. I have brought today Halloween, the original, the 1978 John Carpenter.
Finally, we're talking about Halloween, and it is in the month of October. It is very exciting. So, for those of you who have not seen Halloween, 1, go watch it really quick, but 2, here's a synopsis for Halloween. 15 years after murdering his sister on Halloween night in 1963, Michael Myers escapes from a mental hospital and returns to the small town of Haddonfield, Illinois to kill again.
Bum, bum, bum. Okay, so take us back. You told us that this is a movie that has become like a favorite from when you used to terrify you. But take us back to that young Jared. When did you see this? How did you see it? Why is it your Scarred for Life story? Give us your horror story.
I'm pretty sure it was 12 years old. I was either 11 or 12 when I watched it, and it was, I think it was that, because my birthday's at the beginning of October, so I think for my birthday had a very small, very boxy TV in my bedroom. Was I think it was a birthday and Christmas present. One of those where you kind of, at that age, you kind of forget when it turns around to Christmas, and they're like, oh, remember the TV we got you as well. So that was joint. But so that was the first time having a TV in my bedroom, and there was obviously no. I think I had a little. I can't remember what the brand was, but my dad had it. I think from work. It was like almost the size of like a Nintendo. Is it Switch or whatever? Like they have like all the cool kids have now. The PSP, maybe like a little bit bigger than that. But it was this really old style TV that had this like really kind of long kind of silver aerial. So, and you occasionally could get TV on that. So I guess I did have that, but it didn't really work very well and needed a lot of big batteries. So it wasn't on that often. But so this was like the first time I had some form of kind of like entertainment, or kind of access, I guess, to like the outside world. There was no mobile phone or no social media or computers, anything like that. So, it was a real like window into, like lots of films, and Halloween I'd actually watched it on Halloween night as well. So it was like an extra thing, which was really cool. And I think it was like it wasn't long. Like I remember I'd watch TV, and I guess like from a kid, even before I had the TV, I was quite a night owl. So I'd be up super late, and my parents, and I don't know why they thought I would never discover this, but they had like, and they probably still make them now, I don't know, but like the power line to the TV, before it went into the socket, there was like a little like timer that you could set, where they could set like a certain bit, almost like a thermostat or whatever, when it would just cut the power out for that.
Just cut
plug.
The power, yep.
So sometimes we'd be like watching, this was like, maybe like the first week or so of having this like brand new present, and like the TV at like 10 o'clock at night or something would just cut out. And I'd be like, what is this? And I didn't want to say to them, because I didn't want to like say, I think the TV's broken. And then I discovered that, I was like, maybe it's like the power socket, and I'll change that. And I had these like bunk bed, I moved the bunk bed out and saw this little dial. And then it took me a while to like realize what it was. And then, because it was hidden, like the bed kind of hid it as well. So I unplugged it out and kind of sort of tucked it at the top of my bed and pushed the bunk bed back. And my parents never, I think even to this day, they never sort of knew about that I was watching TV till like all hours. But so Halloween night,
that's hilarious.
I'm up very late. I think it was maybe like a sort of 10:30, 11 or something. I think it must have been on BBC, because there was no like ad breaks, like, and that's like the TV had like 5 TV stations, and 1 and 2 was BBC 1, BBC 2, which you pay in the UK, you pay a TV license, and that's the BBC gets that money, so they don't have to put like ads on. So there was no like intermissions or anything like that, and I had to keep it like really super low, because again, like my parents was kind of thinking that I should be in bed, and there's no TV. And I just remember kind of being sort of sat on the top part of the bunk bed, like near the window. The TV was kind of on that side, so it was like the other side of the wall where my parents' room was. And just watching this film and kind of mesmerized. I think it's still my favorite theme tune as well. Just kind of that score, and just sort of drawing you in. And I think it just like the build up to it as well. Just this, because even though it wasn't in a cinema, the room was pitch black, and you just kind of, I was sort of glued to the TV, and there was no headphones, so I was kind of, I feel like I don't know, almost like I was trying not to, breathe as loud or whatever, so I could hear the TV or whatever. And I was just kind of really kind of huddled in. And
I remember as a kid, like when you had to like have things down really low, because I remember when I grew up, my room was right next to my parents' room, and so if you stayed up late, you had to have the TV really, really quiet, and it almost like makes you more jumpy, because you're just like pulled in. You have to like lean closer to the TV, and you have to like be like more listening to what's happening. So like the scares come, I think, a little bit harder. Yeah.
So even like the little, just like the kind of the little where like Michael's watching Jamie Lee Curtis's character, just those like early bits. I remember like when she's walking with, I think, is it the first friend that gets killed? Like when they're just walking like back from high school, and like Michael's like kind of there in the distance, and then she does that. Like she sees it as she sees him, and then her friend's like, there's no one there, like thinks like the guy behind the bushes, and there's not. Like even like bits like that, which now in later life I'm kind of like, it's cool, but like as a kid I was like, even like those bits, just and I think there was like the little bits of kind of undercurrent of score there as well that would sort of make it even more. I guess like really, I guess maybe not that part was terrifying, but definitely it kind of started that fear, and sort of that the heart started to beat a little faster at those points, and just obviously when the kitchen knife is put to use, and just I don't know, just I think the fact that he never like runs as well, kind of freaked me out even more. I don't know, just that kind of just sort of slow, this expressionless mask as well. It's not like he's got, I'm trying to think of, like Nightmare on Elm Street or things like that, where it's quite a grotesque.
Yeah, and so so like I hadn't actually seen the first Halloween until college, and I watched horror movies a lot as a kid, but it was one of those movies that like I actually was really scared to experience because Michael Myers, because of that mask, it being so blank, it really freaked me out. And something about like the cover and just knowing who Michael Myers was, like I knew who he was, but I had no desire to experience it. But it's also one of those movies that like I had seen snippets of all of the original 5 on TV on like random Halloweens and random like parties and stuff. So like I was aware of him, but I had never watched a full movie. It was always like, oh, I watched part of the marathon on AMC. God, remember that? That was incredible. Anyway, but so then I finally watched it, and it was funny. It was in college, and I lived in like the women and gender studies housing, and we had to put on events every couple of months like to live there. So we did horror movie screenings and talked about Final Girls. And so we were like, okay, we're gonna do because we were all like, it was like 4 of us who just wanted like, it was free housing, so we wanted free housing. We're like, oh cool, so we'll just program horror movies about women, and like we'll talk about women, and we'll get to live here for free for a year. It was awesome. So Halloween was like our Halloween screening, and I was scared watching it. We watched it in like, it wasn't a theater necessarily, but it had like a bigger screen in like it was like a library classroom. And we had like, the music was really loud, and I knew about it, but I didn't know about the cold open, like how shocking that was going to be. Like that cold open is, I just feel one of the most perfect ways to open a movie I've ever seen. Just to be blunt, I think it is the incredible use of the POV through like the killer POV, which I am obsessed with. And I love, like, it's like, I talk about this all the time with like found footage and like the killer POV and found footage links, because that's just like, I love that shit so much. But, and how just disturbing it is that this, like the way this little kid is looking at his naked sister and the murder, it's just all so, it's so incredibly shocking for a movie like this. Like it's always so surprising when you see it. And you're like, oh wow, no, this movie starts off like with a bang very quickly. It always kind of catches me by surprise.
I'll say it does weird me out though that when she gets stabbed, that like it almost sounds like she's moaning. It's very sexualized, and it's a little weird. Especially with the reveal that it's Michael and he's like, you know, her brother. It's like, oh, Michael, and then she's like moaning, and it just like really weirds me out a bit. I'm gonna be perfectly honest.
Yeah, and I like watching. Yeah, I didn't notice this as a kid really, but kind of like rewatching a lot later in life how Jamie Lee Curtis's character, especially, like has kind of all those tropes of like her running away and kind of like sort of tripping up on almost nothing and making, and you know, obviously like you're scared for your life, but I don't know if it feels like almost that over kind of amped of the screams and the distress. I don't know, it almost overly, she's this kind of sort of sweet innocent person, and just like you said, like not her like making like moan sounds or anything, but just that over, like if she falls over, it's just a really kind of dramatic thing that is, I guess, maybe sort of still see it, but it's, I don't know, don't see it as often, like kind of these days of how kind of, like sort of like female characters are portrayed, that it's like, well, surely she doesn't need to trip over. Surely there's other ways, film-wise, you can put her in a place of like danger, and not just, oh, there's a random little rock.
Right. Well, and as I was watching it this time, it like really honed in at how Randy from Scream gets all of his rules from this movie. Like the don't have sex because she's presented very virginal. The not smoking or drugs or whatever, because her friend is toking. And it's such a funny moment in the car where she hands the joint over to Laurie, and Laurie holds it with both fingers. This very like petite and like and then she like starts coughing. So it's obvious she's never smoked a joint before. She doesn't know what she's doing. So there's that rule. And then a character even literally says, I'll be right back. So like, it's obvious, like this is the movie that Randy has seen, that he decided these are the rules of slashers. Cause not all of them follow these rules. It's just, this movie seems to like cement that kind of aspect of the subgenre.
Yeah.
Well, and we talked about that too, because we talked about Black Christmas a couple years ago, and I mentioned, especially in like, because I think Halloween borrows a lot from Black Christmas, but looking at the kind of evolution of the final girl and what how Laurie Strode is so different from our final girl in Black Christmas, and how it's so drastically different, but somehow Laurie Strode became kind of like this pinnacle. And it's like, it's so interesting to think about that too, because like, I don't know if John Carpenter and Deborah Hill really knew what they were doing. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, we'll just like make this kind of archetype character. And it basically spurred like decades of horror discourse, which is wild to me. Like, if you ever think about that, you're like, oh shit, like somehow this character I created has launched like an entire movement in the horror genre. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and just like how like towards like the end when Michael comes into like the house that she's babysitting, like how she's this kind of almost that kind of motherly thing that she takes the other child that her friend's babysitting. It's like, I know I'll be the kind of the mother role as well, and just like you say, adding even more to this, that this is who you should be, kids. You shouldn't go out having sex like unmarried and drinking, underage drinking and smoking and all that. It'll get you killed.
Yeah, definitely created this like very conservative set of like it seemed like a conservative set of rules for horror. Yeah, and it's so funny because like watching more of their movies, like they don't make I don't think they make like super conservative movies. So it's so interesting to see like that evolution with Laurie, because like, but at the same time, like I was tweeting about this because I saw the new Halloween movie and I didn't like it, everybody, but about how this movie I think has an incredible handling of female friendships. Like, it's surface level, but I think it has a really good use of female friendships and communication between young women as well, which I think a lot of, like, especially these new ones, like, kind of miss, is these interactions between women in a way that I think, you know, again, aren't perfect, but I think are also very interesting in terms of female friendship and like, looking at Laurie and her friend group. And I never appreciated that until recently, too, about how they wrote these characters. Like, Deborah Hill, icon, rest in peace, my queen, producer of a lot of these movies and creator of Halloween with John Carpenter, like, helped write all those dialogue sequences. Mm-hmm. And I think that really lends to this, like, incredible feeling in this movie of, like, identifying with these characters and, like, caring for them more, which I hadn't thought about until recently.
Yeah, I thought about it this time, too, with the dialogue and the interactions between them, because I was like, wow, they do feel like actual friends. There's good-natured ribbing. There's like, they sort of like once Laurie says that, you know, she's interested in Ben, is it Tramer? I can't remember what his last name is, but Ben, and all of a sudden, you know, her friend Annie is like calling him up and trying to hook them up, which, who has a dance the day after Halloween? But that's another story. But I was like, what is, it's a little too late for like homecoming dance. But anyway, so like the fact that, you know, she's like, you know, I'm teasing her, that kind of playfulness that they each have like almost a little bit of character traits of them. You know, Laurie's the more, you know, buttoned up. I love that she's wearing a turtleneck. Like, she is so conservatively dressed, and yes. Annie is like dropping off her ward so that she can go get fucked. And then Linda is sort of like, oh, there's an empty house here, I'm gonna go have sex. Like, they all have like these different kind of ditzy personalities, or like strong personalities, or whatever. But they all have interactions with each other that feel so authentic, and that is one thing that really jumped out at me this time. And you're right, Mary Beth. I definitely think it's because you have Deborah Hill writing the dialogue for most of the female characters, I believe, if it's what I read. Yep.
And I think, again, like, that's something that a lot of these other movies miss, I think, in terms of creating these characters. Because, I mean, like, Laurie Strode's an icon. I love her forever. I'll never not love her as a final girl. Like, Jamie Lee Curtis what a bad bitch for, I mean, like, and that woman, I mean, come on, from Halloween to now, she has been unstoppable. I love her so much. Anyway, but.
And that was her first film, I think, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah.
Her first, like,
Yes.
Introducing her.
which is incredible as well. And
It's just, and it's incredible to see, like, the power, lasting power she's had as a figure in horror, and just, like, what Laurie Strode has meant to so many people. I think it's just so fucking cool to have a character like that. And I just, like, appreciate it every time I watch it, because it's just so fascinating and cool. I keep, like, going back to that about, like, the creating of that character, and, like, you never know, like, they probably didn't go into that thinking we're going to create this iconic figure of horror history, but, like, we fucking did, and it's just neat and rad to see that that happen.
Speaking of Black Christmas, though, I do think it's interesting the connection between the two, because Bob Clark and John Carpenter knew each other. They worked on a film, I don't think, that got released. Maybe I can't remember if they did or not, but, like, there was this moment where and there was, like, a quote from a 2005 interview with Bob where he was talking about John Carpenter asked him if he was ever going to do a sequel, and he said no. He was through with horror. And then John said, well, if you were going to do a sequel, what would you do? And he said it would be the next year, and the guy would have actually been caught, escaped from mental institution, go back to the house, and would start all over again, and I would call it Halloween. And so, like, there's always been this kind of, like, thing there that, like, you know, did John pull from that? And Bob is, of course, saying, truth is, John didn't copy Black Christmas. He wrote a script, directed the script, did the casting. Halloween is his movie. And besides, the script came to him already titled anyway. And he's right. After, like, these, because, like, there was, like, a whole rash of, you know, horror movies named after holidays. And so someone was going to do a movie called Halloween. I mean, it's just going to happen.
Yeah, fair enough.
I saw as well that I can't remember, one of the producers as well said that they had this idea about, I think they were sort of trying to find sort of their place in, like, the horror genre, and having like a serial killer that goes after either babysitters or goes after, which was, like, interesting as well. But yeah, I read that about the Black Christmas quote as well, and I thought it was interesting, like, how much as well he kind of said, if there's a sequel, then it'll be like this, and it's like,
Yeah, putting that in my own noggin for later. And I mean, it's, you know, it's obvious, like, movies are influenced by other movies. It's that, you know, there's always going to be that kind of pull from it. What I do think is kind of sad, though, is that most people consider this like the father of the slasher genre, when Black Christmas, I personally think, was doing more and better. Like 6-7 years? Is 6 years? I can't remember exactly when that came out.
I think it was 73, I think.
Was it 73? So like 5 years earlier. And it just, this movie did gangbusters, and that was a little Canadian picture that I think made $4 million. And so it's obviously the one that everyone is seeing is the one that's going to be credited for that. But it kind of does make me sad that Black Christmas was doing most of the things that we like associate with slashers, like the killer POV and the heavy breathing and all that kind of stuff, was doing it, you know, before. Makes me sad.
But they didn't have a cool mask, Terry.
They didn't have a cool mask.
A cool William Shatner mask. I was just gonna say, it's just interesting about how people gravitate and grasp onto the looks of something. I feel like that's what people need, is that icon. Because Black Christmas doesn't have that as much, and I love that. But again, it's so I just think it's so fascinating about when people make horror movies, they want to have that icon. I mean, look at all the masks I have behind me. Obviously, we all want an icon that we can recognize and latch
we have a stranger's mask now.
Oh yeah, I
just
got all
noticed
three.
that.
I got all three of them now. Anyway, it's so interesting about how what we latch onto and what we gravitate towards as people. But that's just me talking nonsense about horror movies.
It's not nonsense, though, because you're absolutely right. I mean, especially in the late 70s, early 80s, it was the villain that, captured everyone's attention. Whether that was, I'll be perfectly honest, Jaws 2 is a slasher, whether it was the shark in that one with the scar on its face, to the Michael Myers mask, Jason's mask, Freddy's burnt face, Chucky. All of these villains became bigger than the characters in the movies for the most part, because they had such iconic, terrifying visages, and we don't get that in Black Christmas.
Yeah. And that's you saying like Jaws as well, like reminding me as well that again Jaws was like a film where I definitely feared going in, not even just the sea, but sometimes in like a pool or something, just like a swimming pool. You'd just kind of go, well, you never know, it could somehow a great white could go through.
Seriously, I brought this up on the podcast before, but I grew up in Alaska. I swam in an indoor pool. I didn't want to swim on my back because I was afraid that Jaws was going to come up behind me, and I called it Jaws, come up underneath me and eat me because I couldn't see underneath me. It's like that irrational fear, and it's just those villains just, I think, tap into something that makes it everlasting in a way.
Yeah, and I used to. I should say this earlier actually, but I at that time as well, after I'd watched Halloween, I did. I had a paper round, and it was quite a small town where I'm from. It was obviously that sort of time of year as well. I was kind of getting up at like 6:30, whatever, doing the paper round before school. So it was very dark, and it was actually quite a, it was probably like a sort of the posher, kind of quite more wealthier area of the town, and long drives, kind of a lot more kind of older, not as old as maybe, kind of the Myers, house, but, kind of this creepy, lots of trees, lots of places where someone could be like hidden behind. So just that as well as a kid, and just, it was, it was fun. It was fun paper.
I was going to ask, is there like, cause like, I mean, they make a comment in this movie about, and I think this is sort of like an iconic thing in these types of films, where it's like the house that everyone knows or everyone thinks is haunted. Did you all have that in growing up, the house in your neighborhood or nearby that everyone is like, that is the haunted house, that is a house you don't want to go into?
I can't think of a house, but there was a like an urban legend about, it was called the Green Lady, and it was how she was like killed and like chopped up by her husband on there. But it kind of didn't really make sense, I guess, because it was meant to be by a roadside as well. So but as a kid, like, you don't really think of like that whole sort of process of that. But yeah, the fact that, and it was near a place called Hubbard's Hills, which is again, very. I think nowadays it's just like kind of like underage drinking that people hang around there, but people kind of say that there's, I don't think we ever said like the boogeyman like in Halloween, but there was definitely kind of that, like there's like the Green Lady and just the supposedly like sightings of like ghosts and that, which nowadays I'm like, no, but as a kid you're like, oh my goodness, I can't go
eat that up. Did you, Mary Beth, at all when you were growing up have any, like the house that everyone warned people to stay away from? Or
there was like an abandoned, this is terrible, but there was an abandoned like plantation house near where I grew up, because I grew up like not in the South, but Maryland. I don't know, where I grew up was like sometimes considered the South. So there was like one of those houses where everyone would go to, like, everyone had a story about finding a dead body in the house. And I would never go in there because I was always too scared. But that's like where everyone like would smoke or like go hook up in the woods. Like I definitely hooked up with a guy in the woods by that house once, because I was a stupid high school student. But yeah, like but that one was like deep, and like we had to like go through the woods. It wasn't like in the neighborhood. Oh, wow. You had to like go through the woods to go to it. So you had to like hike to go there. But it was mostly, like, that was the big one. But there was, like, a couple houses with, like, weirdos that everyone said to avoid. But, like, and fun fact, my house was built on the plot of land where everyone would party. And people would say, don't go there, that's where you go party. And then they demolished everything and put my family childhood home on top of it.
Wow.
I just remember in Alaska, there was always like this one house that everyone said, don't go trick-or-treating there. They're going to put razors in your candy or something. Like that was the big one. Yeah, that was the big one. It's like my parents, I remember, would always check my candy for like, stuff in it, I guess. And
my parents
that was
always
the one house.
checked my candy too. It was, I thought I didn't realize that was a thing that people actually did. I thought my mom was just crazy.
No, my parents did.
Wow.
Maybe it was to sneak some candy without, telling you, but my parents always went through my candy to see if there was any razor blades sticking out of them, I guess. I don't know.
And my mom would throw was them away. They looked open. She was like so nervous that weirdos were like giving kids weird candy. Anyway.
Apples went in the trash.
I had somebody give us toothbrushes. It was so fucking weird.
Oh.
It was so tacky. I was like, guys, just like turn off your lights.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I don't know if it was the same with, I guess, in America with like kind of dollar bills, but every now and then, like, there'd always be like one or two houses where, I guess, yeah, like the people just didn't want to bother buying sweets, so they'd have like pound coins and then just give that, and then like all the kids would be like, hey, that person over there's giving money, and like people would just like run in, and then I think there was like one year, like, I don't know if we'd got there or someone else who got there, and there was like kind of done with that. So there's like, oh, sorry, we don't have any more pound coins, but we can give you, and it wasn't quite fruit, but it was something as a kid where you're like, this isn't like a kind of a boiled sweet type thing. And you're like, this isn't, I didn't want this.
I do remember the houses that would hand out like the big candy bars. Like you would get like the full size candy bars, and those were the houses to go to.
Yeah.
I was trying to think when I was watching this last night. I do not remember when I saw this movie. I don't remember how old I was. What I do remember is knowing that there was a Michael Myers and knowing that mask, but I didn't associate it with this movie because the cover of this movie was like this pumpkin with like a knife hand. And so I honestly got this movie confused. Oh, and I also remember seeing the mask in Halloween 3, like on the cover, the pumpkin again, the pumpkin mask. So I'd always get this movie confused with Pumpkinhead because I thought the killer was walking around with a pumpkin on his head. And so I had Michael Myers in one corner, and I had this pumpkin-headed killer that was in Halloween. And it wasn't until I saw this movie, I don't remember, my teens maybe, finally, that I kind of put two and two together and was like, oh, this is not what I thought it was. But I honestly don't have a lot of nostalgia for this movie. I was a Fredhead. I was a Freddy Krueger fan. I watched all of those. And so that was my kind of serial killer, supernatural killer of choice. So I don't know. This this isn't my favorite movie. This is one of those movies that like I respect it. I know Mary Beth is giving me the look that I get more often than not, it seems like sometimes. But no, I respect this movie a whole lot. I love you and I respect
your opinions. You are your own person and I respect you.
It's just this is a movie I respect. I think there's a lot of great stuff going on to it. It's just not the one that I seek out when I want to watch like a slasher film, shall we say.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
What why? I want to understand.
I think it's kind of boring.
we want to help change you.
Wait, what'd you say? What'd you say, Terry?
I think it's kind of boring.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I've known you for 3 years, and you've never revealed this information to me. I feel betrayed.
Wow, it's getting spicy. That's the spice. It's coming. That's the spice that we was promised. The pumpkin spice.
The pumpkin spice. Yeah,
okay.
I don't know. Like, there's a lot going on here that is really, oh my God, very bad. I feel like this is a good thing that this is like a few weeks before your wedding, so that maybe I can, by the time it is your wedding, we'll just have completely forgotten about this.
Just make sure you remove all kitchen knives.
I'm changing your table to the Halloween table. I put you at the Nightmare on Elm Street table, but now I'm changing it just to fuck
As
with
you
you.
should. It's the superior movie.
I'm gonna kick your ass!
No, okay, there is a lot going on here that is really, really quite good. The score is fantastic, although I will say that he repeats the same things a little too much for me. But the score, like that, I know. That theme, though, when that theme comes on in the very beginning of the film, and it's like, it's dark screen, and you just get that theme, I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. And that slow, camera moving in on the pumpkin, absolutely fantastic. The cinematography by Dean Cundy, Dean Cundy is a fucking all-star when it comes to being a DOP. The movies he's shot, from Jurassic Park, Apollo 13, all the way back to this, like, he filmed most of the films that I would remember as a child. gosh, he did Back to the Futures, he did Hook, Death Becomes Her, Jurassic Park, Casper, Apollo 13. Like, this dude knows how to shoot a movie, and that is one thing that I really appreciated on this watch that I might not have appreciated before, is the way that scenes are staged. There's a lot of use of the foreground and the background, a lot in this film that I think is really fucking rad to look at, particularly looking at it now as an adult versus when I probably first saw it. I love the way things are staged in here.
I think that's the thing, the lack of cuts, like kind of nowadays there'll be go into the room and then it'll be a whatever close up and all this other thing, like so cut, but like there's so many scenes when I forget the doctor's name now, but when he first goes into the Myers house with the sheriff, there's really not that many cuts, and like you say, there's just so much of the scene that you can you can see in that, and just I think it kind of adds it in certain scenes, especially when Laurie goes into the house to find Annie and sort of finds before she finds the bodies. There's just like so much. You're like, is Michael going to be there or there? Like, it's not just that kind of close on her. It's wide enough to go. Are we going to see him like kind of creep into frame, and just like how they do earlier when you just see a shoulder or the back of the head. And it's awesome.
I think the way that the movie uses Michael he almost like teleports everywhere. Like, there's like a quick shot where he's there and then someone turns away and they're back and he's vanished. He's gone. He's teleported somewhere else. And they do this so much with, like, you're expecting to see him in a shot that by the time you know that he's in the house, like you said, you're waiting for him to pop out at any moment or walk behind her or be like leering at her or something like that. And it does create that sort of dread that you were expecting him to be at any moment, just like there. And that's really good, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And like even like watching it, last week, just to kind of give myself a refresher, just still had all the lights out and just the slow builds. And it's definitely not the experience I had like kind of watching the first time as a kid, that sort of fear that it put into me, but just I don't know, just the appreciation for it, and kind of watching, like, whenever I see, like a really awesome horror that doesn't have to do too much, like the fact that he doesn't have to run after them, he's this kind of menacing character, and there's not even like that much blood. Like, I guess you still like watching it recently, you have to suspend belief that how can a kitchen knife go through a body and not only kind of keep, I can't remember, like the boyfriend, like kind of suspended, but also kind of pinning him to whatever that wall is. But
well, also, we haven't talked about my favorite part of this movie, which is Dr. Loomis, Donald Pleasance as the incredible dog. I love him in this. I love him. He sometimes feels like he's in a completely different movie to me sometimes, like with the way he acts. Like, it just feels like so campy, but I love that. Like, it's my favorite. And I love him in all the other movies too. And I just love Donald Pleasance. Am I saying it fancy or not? I don't know how I'm supposed to say it, but I just love him. And I think he's just incredible in these movies and adds this like ridiculous level of like camp to the movie that I don't think was intended, but that's why it's camp to me, because I don't think it was on purpose, and it's my favorite. He's so good. The way he just yells, his eyes are always bulging out of his head, and he's just yelling about Michael Myers. Like, what's wrong with you? It's incredible. It's so stupid.
I just like love how as well when he's like just kind of like waiting outside the Myers house, and I think those like the bullies, and he kind of like does whatever the voice, and they run off.
Hey, Lonnie.
And then, and he's just like and again, it's like you have to like suspend like the, I guess, mechanics of if it were to really happen, but like he's been outside the house, and wherever like Michael parks the car that he realizes the car that he steals, like when they try and go visit him. Like, I'm like, surely you would, because like his reaction to it as well, like just like the way he's kind of just like looking around, and then he's like, wait a minute. It's like, wouldn't you have heard like the car
there before?
Who put that car there? But,
maybe it teleports in like Michael does. Like, it just teleports places.
Michael Myers is such an enigma, and I love it so much. Like he's just a dude. He is presented as just a dude, and then as the franchise progresses, we know that it gets even weirder than that. But it really is fascinating. This guy is he's just a weird dude in a blue outfit with blue jumpsuit with a mask and a fucking kitchen knife. It's so simple, but it's so fucking scary.
It is. Yeah, I think that's the simplicity of it. Just just this blank expression, this blank Shatner-esque. And I was kind of wondering as well, just because he kills the mechanic to get that blue outfit, but I just wonder, like, what other potential Michael outfits could there have been if there wasn't a mechanic there that he could have killed? Like, just what?
This happenstance that creates an iconic look. Like, it's just, it's perfect. It's like when Jason finds his hockey mask. It's like, what if it was something else? Like, it's that moment that like creates this iconic image of him. I do want to talk about that simplicity though, because it is something that I think this movie does incredibly well with, like, the fact that we don't need to know much about Michael Myers, except that Donald Pleasance refers to him as an it. And that was such a funny moment that I picked up on this time, where he's like, don't underestimate it. And the nurse Marion is like, don't you think we could refer to him as a he? Like he's like, your compassion's overwhelming, doctor. But like, to him, this is like not a person. This is evil personified. And I that's something that I picked up on this time a whole lot, where it's like, we don't really know much about Michael. We know that he was a kid that killed his sister. He hasn't spoken a word in that entire time. And between that 15 years, Dr. Loomis has gone from wanting to try to rehabilitate him to wanting to make sure that he never sees the light of day outside of wherever he's at, because he sees like something in him, almost like there's like a line that I feel like is pulling from Jaws, because he's like talking about his eyes. And it reminded me of like the way Quint would talk about the shark's eyes of being like a doll's eyes, a dead eyes, that's what it reminds me of. Like, we're talking about this creature, not this human being, this utterly evil being that is just there for one reason, and that is to stick knives in people and stick them into the wall.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Halloween.
Yes, Halloween. That's why the Halloween's the best horror film.
Look, I love Halloween. Terry, I love you, but I disagree with you. I just think that I agree with you that Black Christmas, it did everything it did a little bit better. Like, I love Halloween. I think it's great. I just think Black Christmas is like the more elevated version of that. But goddamn, if Michael Myers isn't scary as shit, and if Laurie Strode isn't the coolest final girl, and if it just like didn't give us some iconic images, like, I don't know, and then fucking Dr. Loomis, who's just a goddamn lunatic. So good, Terry. God, I love you, but why?
I know. I'm a Fredhead. I love that.
I also love Freddy. But Freddy's funny.
But you are a recent Fred person.
Don't hold that over my head. Sorry, Jared. No. This is getting spicy.
It's good.
No, one thing I picked up this time that I never really noticed before is that he eats a dog. There's a moment when there's a moment where when Loomis and the sheriff walk into the Myers house, and there's like, oh, is that a dog? Yeah. And he's like, he got hungry. And I'm like, what did he do to this dog?
I forgot about that. Ew, what the
I was like, excuse me? This is like a normal thing? He got hungry.
Yeah.
What?
It's not like, the hardware store, like, obviously didn't have any food, and he didn't want to go into any other store to shoplift, so he was like, I'm just gonna talk.
Well, that was the other funny part, when like there's the break-in at the hardware store, and he's like, oh, and the sheriff is like, oh, it's just some kids. They stole a mask, a knife, and some rope. Like, just some kids. And I'm like,
nothing to worry about.
Absolutely nothing to fucking worry about. There's nothing weird about that at all. Like,
how are you a sheriff?
I just.
Also, as well, like, I feel like, and someone that has a lot of I've like dealt with my life not having a great sense of smell. Like the fact when Laurie's like coughing and they've got like the and they're like, oh, don't let my like stop coughing. Like I don't want my dad to know. And they roll down the window, and it's like, would he not? Because he like leans in. He's like, you girls like, yeah,
pour it out of the car.
It would have. It would have been like, yeah, incredible. And
he was just totally like, all right, girl.
So I'm not really a defender of the new movies. I enjoyed the 2018 Halloween. I didn't really care for the last one, and I have not seen this new one. But there is one moment in here that I thought was kind of interesting in relation to Halloween Kills, because there's this moment where the sheriff is like, I'm going to call people, I'm going to let everyone know, and Dr. Loomis is like, if you alert them, everyone will see him on every single street and every single house. The evil will spread.
Every single
horse. But he's like talking about how the evil will kind of spread across town and people will start seeing it. And that is kind of what happens in Halloween Kills.
That does kind of extend into Halloween Ends too. And that's not a spoiler or anything, but like it's a similar thing. Is in the new one as well. But
I did think that was kind of interesting that like they kind of pulled from this idea that like if everyone knows that he's there, everyone's going to see him no matter where they're at, and we're never going to be able to find him. And so I did kind of think, watching this movie so closely after watching Halloween Kills, that, you know, there is that sort of nugget that I think has informed that second movie in this new trilogy a little bit.
I didn't think about that.
I hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
Cool. Well,
so there's a positive.
I know. Do we want to wrap up and give Halloween a rating out of 5?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, Terry. How many teleporting Michaels out of 5 do you give Halloween? And I know it's going to make me sad no matter what you say. So,
I give it a 1. No, I'm kidding. Wow. I'm totally kidding. Totally kidding. This movie is technically well made, especially considering that it is like a very indie film made for $300,000, very like scrappy independent filmmaking, established careers for Dean Cundy, for John Carpenter, for Deborah Hill, for
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh my gosh, I just was like, for Laurie, but it's not Laurie. But established like their careers, and it's such a humble beginning for it. I think this movie is really well made. It's just not a movie that I go to when I want to get my slasher fix. And that's just, I have to be who I am. But I think it's a very well made movie. I'm going to give it 4 teleporting Michaels out of 5 because It is a very well made movie. It's just not my personal cup of tea, but I can appreciate it and respect it for what it is. How's that, Mary Beth? Not as spicy as you were probably expecting.
Not as spicy as I was expecting. You're right.
But what about you, Mary Beth? Is this a 5?
This is a 5 for me. It's a 5 across the board. I think it's an incredible movie. I think, I don't know. I've already said everything I love about this damn movie. It's Laurie Strode, Michael Myers, Dr. Loomis, all these just ridiculous things coming together to create something that I think even after 40 plus years is terrifying and timeless in a way. And I just, despite how much I'm not the biggest fan of the new trilogy, I mean, like, it just goes to show you how much this figure has persevered and like made it through the time, like horror time, which I think is so amazing and speaks to how terrifying he is and can be. So it's 5 for me. But Jared, you have the final word. How many teleporting Michaels out of 5 do you give Halloween?
Oh no, it's going to be 5 for me as well. 5 teleporting Michaels. And I remembered as well that, and this isn't my story, but it's my mum's friend, like when she was, I don't know how old they would have been, like, but they went to the cinema to see Halloween, and her friend actually, I want to say it was a kitchen knife, but maybe it might not, maybe it was just like a regular knife or something, but her friend was, I guess like her parents was out of town or something, so she was staying home alone, and like the next day, or like maybe a few days after, like she told my mum that she was like, yeah, I actually had a knife under my pillow, because she was that scared of a Michael Myers. So it's.
I can believe it. I can believe that.
I think that, I don't know, that time period as well. Like you see, like even in films and TV shows now. Like, I watched, a few weeks ago, I watched Black Phone, and there's just like certain things as well, like in that film where these kids are going missing, and like parents are like, yeah, no, you go to school, like you can walk yourself back and to and from school. Like, it's like, even though there's a guy that's like missing children and that, and the same in this, like the kind of like windows being like left open and stuff, and it just it's always kind of a fun like horror trope where it's like when Jamie Lee Curtis's character, like, I think after like the she stabs him from like the closet, and she kind of just drops the knife like right by his body, even though she thinks he's dead. It's just like, just take the knife with you. Like, you've seen him. You've seen him how he got up from the knitting needle and all these other things, and
right. Well, one last thing, though, that just popped in my head as you were talking about the sort of like leaving the doors open and everything. What really struck me this time was when Lori is trying to get help, and she goes to that next door neighbor and is pounding on the door. The light turns on. They look out their blinds, and then they close the blinds and turn off the light. And it's like, wow. It's like right there is like a little bit of social commentary about the suburbs and people that are supposed to be kind of like this community. Then they're just like, I'm not dealing with any of that, whatever's going on out there.
Yeah. You're on your own. Yeah.
Yup.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jared, for joining us to talk about Halloween. Where can our listeners find you, and what do you have? The floor is yours. What do you have to talk about or plug?
Well, and thank you for having me. When the Screaming starts, it's out currently on Screambox, and it's going to be out on transactional on Amazon Prime and iTunes on October 25th, I believe. And we're on all the socials. I think it's When the Screaming Starts on Instagram and Facebook, and at When Screaming on Twitter. So yeah, that's us. And if you like, not trying to compare it to Halloween, but yeah, there's a slow build with comedy, and then you kind of get your screaming and fake blood fix kind of from the middle onwards. So yeah.
Hell yeah.
Awesome.
So listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with Halloween? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I'm at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful, and be nice to me online.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe, and support us through Patreon.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Somebody please think of the children! Somebody please think of the children! Somebody please think of the children!
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.